Welcome everyone. So we've got the great privilege tonight of having a conversation with Dave Quak, which is going to be really good. So for those of you who are here at the church and come to the night service and maybe it's your first time, this is just something we do every now and then where we like to have a bit more of a conversation around an important topic and be able to interview someone who's had some experience with that or research around that. So tonight we've got Dave, as I say. So Dave, I'm sure he'll tell us much more about himself in a minute, but he's at Living Temple Church. Is that in Palm Beach?
We're down in Tugan, near the airport.
A little further down.
Yeah.
It's literally right near the airport, I hear, so you can feel it every few minutes.
It's literally right in the flight path, and so during every sermon, a plane interrupts everything at least 3 times, brother.
It's the Lord, he's speaking. So he's out there and he's lead pastor with his wife Jess, and he does a really awesome podcast. So I encourage everyone to listen to it. Sunburnt Souls. So that's been something that you've kind of more recently done, and it's on basically the kind of topic that we're talking about tonight, which is faith and mental health. How does that kind of interact? So. Welcome, Dave.
Mate, it's my pleasure. And I'm a Wynnum boy from way back. I grew up on our Coomey Street in Wynnum North. I don't know if anyone knows our Coomey Street. And then, you do? And I went to Wynnum High and Wynnum North Primary when that was still a primary school. Yeah. First job was at Macca's down the road here at Wynnum West. So it is nice to be back in the stomping ground.
Yeah, come on. So you went to Wynnum High?
Yep.
We've got a few Wynnum High boys here. Yeah, there's a few.
Is Wynnum High good? Yeah. I mean, it was a school when I was there.
It did the job. Well, no, thanks for coming, and thanks for coming up all that way from Tugan. It's on a short distance, and so we had Dave at the men's breakfast about a week ago now, and it was a really, really wonderful time, and conveniently it coincided with having another conversation with a week later. So I thought it'd be cool for our listeners to just learn a little bit about yourself. So figured you could tell a little bit about yourself, and then kind of how did you come to this journey of talking about faith and mental health in particular?
Yeah, for sure, Matt. So I am married to Jess. We've been married 20 years. We've been pastors together for 20 years as well. We've always been on team together.
Come on.
We also have a son called Josiah. He's 15 and still likes my company, Matt, which is fantastic.
Look out.
And my daughter Milani is 13 and she's my retirement plan. So she's like the straight A moral sort of awesome, the model citizen. She's actually right now at my sister's house getting maths tutoring just down the road while I'm doing this.
You were saying she's giving maths
tutoring.
No,
she's getting it because she didn't get an A+, and she's upset. So she's trying to fix that up.
Right.
That's not from me, man. I got an OP22. Is anyone old enough to remember the OP system?
Yeah.
25 is the worst. I got a 22. So I peaked later in life, Matt.
I didn't even go for an OP, so there you go.
Yeah, there you go. I probably shouldn't have. And now I've been leading a church that my wife and I planted 12 years ago.
Right.
Okay, so we were youth pastors before that. And my life at the moment now is balancing church and this podcast, because even though I'm a Christian pastor, I love the Lord, I also walk with some pretty significant mental health issues, Matt.
Yeah.
Particularly in the form of bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
So some of you might know that as manic depression. It used to be called that. Now it's called bipolar disorder. And basically the idea is there's 2 poles. On one end of the pole is what they call mania, or when you're manic. And when you're manic, you're like elated and pumped up and your mind is running and you run on no sleep and you're very like hyped up. But
like
it goes for too long.
Adrenaline all the time type of feel? Or is it like adrenaline?
Yeah, it's like adrenaline, too many coffees, kind of like you're nervously anxious.
Yep.
So you like fidget around and stuff, and you get fixated on like ideas and they won't break for a long period of time. Or you'll think about a business you want to start, and then you'll just research it to death from beginning to end, every aspect of it.
Wow.
And so you get really fixated. Before I was diagnosed, I obviously didn't know I had it. I just thought I was like easily fixated. And so I'd get an idea in my head and then just binge research for 5 days. And by the end of 5 days, I'd have like business names set up and websites and all kinds of stuff.
So you could be pretty productive if you really wanted to, yeah.
There's actually a few Australian pastors with bipolar who, you know, one for example, wrote a book in 3 days.
What?
While he was manic. His stuff was good though. So when I come out of my mania, it's not quite as good. And so it can be used and redeemed for God's purposes. So say like, imagine bipolar like a wave and you're 70% up the wave. It's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
Like you're energetic, you can preach really well, you can run, you know, meetings, like it's elating. You can work a room, meet lots of new people.
Yeah.
But then what happens if you stay there too long is you get too manic and it all becomes too much. And it's like a noise infusion and your head's just, it's like, you know that 20 minutes straight after church? I don't know if you guys have it here, but that 20 minutes...
is like an hour to 2 hours if you're going
but the 20 minutes is the worst, where everyone's like, rah! Like talking and a kid sneaks up and starts bashing on the drum kit.
There's always one.
There is. And you know who the parent is, but they don't know that the kid's doing it. They're out getting a coffee, you know, and, you know, so that time when I'm really manic is really quite stressful and...
Pretty full on.
Yeah, it's full on. And then what happens is after I've stayed there, I eventually fall off the cliff because your body can't sort of like handle that, you know, the lack of sleep.
Does it kind of just get too tired?
It's too much, man. Like, it's too much. And if you do it too long, your body gets exhausted. Yeah. And then you sort of fall into, this is what happens with me. Yeah. Fall down into like a depressive sort of stage.
Yeah, right.
And it's almost like you go from being on cloud 9 to having a cloud of darkness just put over you within a couple of days. And so bipolar, 2 ends of the pole. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you've had that for most of your life, like in that kind of form, or is it something that gradually got...
mostly in your adult life. In my adult life, sort of since 20s, I can notice the patterns. I wasn't diagnosed till much later, but now looking back, I was like, nearly everything I did was almost triggered behaviour and in those rhythms.
Yeah.
Now, this is the thing about it, man, is it doesn't mean you're a complete write-off either, is because in those times we planted 2 churches and did a whole bunch of stuff that God used. Yeah. But just in amongst it, I was just paying a bit of an internal mental price.
Yeah. So that'd be quite disorientating too, I imagine, because you kind of be on this, like you say, cloud 9 and you're just like, whoa, let's pump it on all cylinders. Yeah. And then all of a sudden just kind of down.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So how has that affected you during your pastoral ministry?
Yeah, it's affected me in all different ways. Like I
said,
just
in life, sorry. It doesn't have to just be pastoral ministry, yeah.
I can be somebody who is extremely fun to be around. Let's start with some good things because we're only warming up, Matt. You know, like I can be fun in our household. I'm always the one bringing the laughter and the noise, and like, you know, ever since the kids were born, chasing them around, tackling them, having laughs. You know, we live life to the full. Yeah. And that's the same with ministry. Like our church is a fun church, and you know, just it's that atmosphere where we're full on believers and love Jesus completely and have a lot of fun in the process.
Yeah, it's good.
You know, so there's that good side of it. Yeah. And you know, out of that you can initiate and think of ideas and innovate, and then just, I guess, where it becomes probably problematic is when I'm manic for too long. You're not the best pastor when you're speaking over people when they're trying to like tell you their problems,
for sure.
Or you get to a place where you're so wound up that you don't care about the urn being left on. You know, you're just like, someone will tell you something and you're just like, I just don't care. I've got zero care for this right now.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess like the compassion side sometimes can go out the window when you've kind of been on that manic for too long.
Yeah.
Has that, just knowing your story, like, has that, have you been in that kind of down the end, the bottom of the wave for, like, how long are you there for usually, or has there been a moment? Because I know you have a story of becoming burnt out from that, right?
There seems to be a proportion that the longer you're up and manic, the worse the depression gets.
Right.
And so what you're talking about with the burnout, basically I was working at my church 2.5 days a week and then lecturing at Christian Heritage College
Yep.
2 days a week.
Yep.
And they were both really big commitments. And if they were both managed, everything was fine. But if everything, like, so you know how like sometimes in church world, a 2.5 day a week can be a 2.5 day week, but other times it can be a 6 day week itself. Yeah. And so if that happened and then it was, say, marking, I had like 90 students, right?
Fun.
And then I had to mark those in 2 days, 2,000 words.
Yeah.
You know, so 180,000 words in a week. You know, I was almost forced just to lean into the craziness.
Yeah.
And then what happened is I did that for too long. I did that for like...
Pushed yourself too hard for too long.
Yeah. And then what happened is the cloud of darkness came and didn't leave for months and months and months.
Yeah, wow.
And so I burnt out to the place where I was like wondering whether or not I should stay in Christian ministry. I didn't lose my faith. I still love Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I felt like I couldn't function very well. Now, at that point, I finished up the job at the university, at the lecturing, and then just was a pastor. And what I did, instead of doing 3 big days or whatever, I just kind of spread it out over a week.
Yeah.
And just tried to get through every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my church was gracious, like they loved me through it. But
I was going to ask, how did they go with that?
Amazing, man.
Yeah,
amazing.
great.
So like during the worst of it, like I'd literally get up and dread the alarm clock going off. If you can just imagine deep darkness and depression. And so I'd dread, oh no, the day's started, you know, and then I'd look at my calendar and be like, okay, I got this many coffees or this many things to do. And be like, Jesus, you got to help me. And it was just like a cross between God and caffeine and digging deep and trying to get through the day, bro.
Yeah.
You know, and because I do love the church, man. Like, I get annoyed at little things like every pastor, except you, mate.
Like
you don't get annoyed. But, like, yeah.
I get annoyed at multiple things.
Yeah, you get annoyed. But, like, you know, I'd get through the day and then I'd literally get home and I have a man robe, Matt. Okay, a man robe is...
I need to get a man robe.
You got to get it. I got it given to me. It's like a fluffy bathrobe-y thing, you know.
Does it have like rubber duckies on it or is it...
Do you guys know what I mean? Like a man robe? Yeah. Okay.
Man robe.
Yeah, what do you even call them? I don't think they're called man robes.
They're probably just robes.
Probably just robes. They probably are just robes. Anyone can wear them, yeah. Anyway, so I'd get my robe and get home, sitting on a chair sort of similar to this, but a recliner, and just put it over my head, mate.
Yeah.
From about 3 till 4, because I knew the kids were getting home at 4 o'clock. And I'd just be like depriving myself from all noise and intrusion because I wanted to somehow dig deep to give them something when they got home. It was horrible, mate.
No, it wouldn't be.
And it is horrible. So that's kind of like representative of the dark times when you're bipolar.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you come out, I guess, have things gotten better since then for you in terms of that?
Yeah, so the worst of it lifted.
Yeah, great.
It took a long time, bro. So I went on 2 months long service leave to Thailand, and it was basically a do or die kind of trip. It's like, I got to get better or I got to get out.
Yeah.
And so we went there and it was a brilliant trip and God did some great things. But for the first month, I was still very agitated and down and anxious and just messed up.
Yeah.
And then after about a month, we were in Bangkok and I was out just sort of every day doing a bit of business with God. And I still remember crying out to him in this Airbnb, just saying, I'm so sick of it. And after a big psalm of lament, I eventually said, you know, I can't do this anymore, God. And it was pretty cool because it was the first time after I admitted that a sense of his peace descended upon me. And I felt his kind of like prompting, leading voice saying, good.
Yeah.
Now we're ready.
Just to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'd, you know, inadvertently started to think that the ministry rested on me or the responsibilities of life rested on me. And I just was crushed, man. I was just crushed and dark. And after admitting that, it didn't go away straight away, bro.
Yeah.
But it gave me hope.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So
and
something started to lift off.
Started to
kind
lift.
of going, I can't do this.
Yeah, if you can imagine a cloak of darkness on you, it finally started to withdraw. And
do you think there was something in that was like surrender? Because I always I talked about this quite a lot, particularly at youth group, but like this whole control idea. that often we hold too much. And I struggle with it. I think everyone does to some degree, but when you're holding so much, trying to control it, and you're the one, like you say, who's the pastor and you're trying to get stuff done and look after people and blah, blah, blah. But then as soon as you kind of go, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not meant to do this by myself. Like, do you think there was an aspect there of surrender that helped?
Oh, yeah. You nailed it, mate. It definitely was. It was coming to a place where I put myself in perspective with who God is and, just realised I'd just been trying to carry some of his burdens. And it's that classic verse, take my yoke upon you. You know the verse. And
We've been talking about that a lot recently.
It's a great verse. And I felt two things. I felt really like I was carrying weight that wasn't mine. And then in that, when I was like crying out, also there's that verse, I think it's in 1 Peter, where he's sort of like, be shepherds of God's flock that's under your care, not because you must, but because you're willing.
Yeah.
And I think I got to a place where I just felt burdened and heavy. I must do this and I must do that.
Yeah.
Whereas I got set free from that, and now it's, something I willingly want to do.
That's cool. I like that. So what was the process like after that?
So
you said it started to kind of lift off, but it took a bit of a process.
Yeah, man. And the craziest thing happened. So a few weeks later when we got home, I woke up one day before the alarm and I felt great. And I was weirded out by that, man, because I hadn't felt great in a long time.
Wow.
And so I just kind of kept it to myself. And then the next day I woke up before the alarm again and felt great. And I didn't need to get through on caffeine and grit and everything. I just went through the day in God's presence. And then the next day again. And then after about 5 days, I was brave enough to let the people in my world that I think we're good. And my wife's, she's the loveliest human. She's so encouraging, and she was like, yeah, awesome. But she was also gun shy, because I'd been cactus for a long time. And so...
Are you actually okay?
She's like, are you actually good or what? And then the dark cloud had lifted. And so where I find myself now, man, is that I still have the rhythms of bipolar, and I've got to really watch myself and have safeguards in place. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But the worst of the darkness passed, and I think now I'm able to manage it a bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, praise the Lord. That's awesome.
It's all been him. His grace,
Yeah, absolutely. And loving family and friends, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, the friends and the family have been amazing, man.
Yeah, good. So I guess I have so many different thoughts and things to kind of unbox. But what do you think? Because I heard you say it in the men's breakfast, and I've heard you say this kind of thing before. But like, how do you think, in terms of mental health type stuff, like the spiritual aspects of things? Because you were talking about, and I won't steal your thunder, I'll let you explain it. But it was talking about how for many years the church has kind of played off some mental health as it's all just a spiritual thing. You just need to pray. Yeah. And I think that's not completely always wrong. Do you know what I mean? But so what do you think is a good balance in terms of that? Where's the spiritual aspect come into it all?
Matt, you write a book and figure that out, and you will be so rich, because it's messy and it's really hard to figure out.
Yeah.
So what I've landed on is that right down one extreme, we have the belief that, it'll get solved in an amazing prayer time at the altar, 5 minutes of laying hands and deliverance or whatever else, and you get set free.
Yeah.
Epic if that's what happens to you. I pray it does.
Yeah.
And then right on the other end, we've got people who believe that mental illness has got nothing to do with spirituality, and it's only a chemical, biological, physical thing. I just think in the middle is this mess where most people with mental illness who love Jesus live.
Yeah.
Where there's aspects of it that are spiritual, aspects of it that are biological and physical.
Yeah.
And somehow we've got to figure out, it's going to be different for every Christian, but we've got to figure out how to live in that, whatever that overlay is.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
What's been your experience of how to do that?
Yeah, so for me, the way it works is that I am a fan of every tool in the toolbox. Okay. So for me, Okay, when I initially got diagnosed and started this process, I went to every prayer, healing thing I could go to. Because I'm like, look, first I'm fighting spiritually.
Yeah.
And I'm still fighting spiritually. I'm still praying all the time. At my psychologist and psychiatrist recommendation, I started on a couple of medications.
Yep.
Because my body wasn't producing certain chemicals it needed to produce to fight against the symptoms of bipolar.
Yep.
And so I basically fight spiritually, I fight medically.
Yeah.
I'm on quite a strict regime of different medication. And between the two of them, it kind of levels me enough that if I was a bit better at applying things like exercise and eating well, I think I'd be a bit better off. And so I want to catch up with your wife many times and get some advice, because I'm a sugar head and I've got to stop that. Sugar's bad.
You and me both, bro.
But Matt, I do reckon it's that. I'm still trying to articulate it. I've been getting experts on. I got this guy on the other day he's an expert who speaks in this stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just like, can you articulate for this, miss? And it was an hour and 40 minutes later.
Wow.
You know, like it's the longest thing.
It's not a simple topic.
It's just so difficult, bro.
Absolutely. But you're saying it's kind of a little bit more holistic in terms of that.
I do think so.
It's not like either or. It's not like all spiritual, not spiritual at all. But then also like there's almost other dimensions that come out. And it makes sense in my mind that if you're to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, that's basically is how I read it. It's to love the Lord your God with every aspect of how God made you.
That's right.
As a human. Not just a spiritual, not just a physical, not just an emotional, not just a mental, and so on. But it's all of them, and they all play it. I mean, this is how I've looked at it. It all plays a part. It's a bit more holistic to kind of look at it. And that's where, for instance, nutrition comes in. If you eat Maccas every single day and you've got really bad mental health, that might not be helping.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
The same as Maccas every day doesn't help our insulin-dependent diabetic brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, like, you can't say to someone who's insulin-dependent that they don't have faith or what. They literally can't produce the insulin that they need. They need a supplement, right?
Yeah.
They can be full-on Christians, pastors, leaders, elders, ministers, whatever else. There's nothing stopping that, but it is they live in that interplay. In my mind, that's the exact same interplay.
Yeah.
It's a physical condition that we're working with. Except in my case, it's just less easy to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I was thinking about it, and you think about mental health, and it is like kind of a big topic in our society, particularly in the West at the moment. It's a huge focus and kind of understandably so. Like there's a lot of young people in particular struggling with mental health. And I'm just talking about it more generally speaking in terms of mental health, an unhealthy mental health. But what do you see in you can go from some of the podcasts you've had, some of your thoughts, but where is it coming from?
I think two things. I think firstly, we're speaking about it more, so it may have already been there, but now it's being raised to the surface, so it seems like it's more prevalent. Yeah. I think that's one aspect. And I think secondly, man, we just are living in an anxiety-producing type world, I think. It's always been like that. Anyone who was around in war times, obviously that's an anxiety-producing. I think maybe the difference now is just because the one problem with it is because it's so normalized, my fear is that people who don't have mental health issues jump on the bandwagon. Yeah. But I don't want to dismiss people by saying that, because they could be legitimate. It's the same as anything that's popular. Yeah. And I don't mean popular as in cool, I mean popular topic of conversation. Yeah, prevalent. Well, that's right. There's a risk people get involved in it, even if they're not necessarily.
Like a social contagion.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's a bit of that case going on. What does bother me, is tomorrow my podcast comes out with an interview with my daughter who's 13. And I interviewed her for two reasons. One, she deals with me, and it's good for kids to know how to deal with a parent with mental illness. Yeah. But so many of her peers are having anxiety attacks at school or panic attacks or whatever. And she just stands there as 13-year-old trying to manage her own emotions and everything as well, and then also try to figure out these deep things that are happening in her peers. And so So I think it's getting younger as well.
Yeah.
I think there's something going on. And now I want to make sure this caveat's known. I'm not a medical professional.
Yeah,
So that's on every little disclaimer. I'm a pastor with bipolar. I don't have any
going through a journey yourself. Yeah.
So that my experience is only personal and pastoral.
No, great.
Just want that. And
no, that's great.
It's got to be
I
somewhere.
should have said that at the start a little bit.
Yeah.
No, because I mainly wanted to get you on the podcast just to hear your story and some of you seem like you're definitely in process like the rest of us.
Yeah.
And we're just working out like, how do we do this faith and mental health type thing, and how do we do this well as the church? And I really love that.
Yeah. And doing it well in the church, that's the next question, I think. I just think, here's the thing. So straight away, the idea of someone who's bipolar being a pastor has risks, because part of the mania, if it's not managed well, is that you get delusions.
Oh, true.
Okay. Now, I get little delusions in the sense of like, I might think I'm better at something than I actually am. Right. So, which drives my wife insane, because I'm always like pitching these ideas that I'm convinced are going to work. Yeah. Right. And so like,
I think we all do that as men.
No. But mine is like, okay, so you know how like, you don't have kids yet, do you, Matt?
No, not
Okay,
yet.
so like if you're going to your wife and you're lighting candles and cooking a romantic dinner and you've got some lovely music on and you've dressed nice, you're after something different than me, because when I do that, I get to the end of the dinner and I say, Jess, I got an idea for you, baby. Like I wine and dine her just so I can pitch these
my
ideas.
business idea.
We've got to move this and we've got to do this and that, you know. Whereas you're just after a kiss, Matt. You know, so like it's a whole different dynamic. So
how did you know?
Yeah. You know, and so okay, so if I've got that level of like, I need a safeguard when it comes to what I think is accurate or not. Now, my primary role at church is to teach the Word of God.
Yeah.
You don't want someone handling the Word of God who isn't thinking clearly or isn't, hearing from God. So I got really strict safeguards in place around what I preach on, and I run it through people, and got a really strong eldership team, lots of theologically trained people who are just there.
That's
now, look,
good.
I've been doing this 20 years. Not once has anyone said, dude, you moved into delusion there. But if I ever do, I got that safe. So
that's really good.
Yeah. And so what I think the principle is that people with mental health conditions aren't disqualified from any ministry position in a church environment. The same as anyone with a physical condition isn't.
Yeah.
I just don't
diabetes,
think.
do you mean?
That's
like
right.
Insulin and stuff?
We're just not used to it.
Yeah.
Like we're not, as faith communities, kind of trained in the art of taking care of the mentally ill.
Yeah.
So let's just look at your venue. I came in and I had instant venue envy, right? So there's a cry room back there, which is accommodating any nursing mums who don't want to be seen breastfeeding in church. Good. It's reflective. You can't see in there.
Yeah.
That's to safeguard them.
Yeah.
Right? There's an area back there that's an overflow room that young parents can go in. So if they need to walk their prams around, it's good. But what would I don't have an answer, but what would it look like to accommodate someone who maybe needs to pace up and down the back, or like me in my darkness had to sit with a blanket over his head? Now, I don't think someone sitting with a blanket over their head would be that intrusive, but if someone did it in a church, everyone after church will be like, wait, did you see that dude sitting with a blanket on his head?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't have an answer, but I just know we're not used to it. We're not used to anyone who's a bit fringy or someone we'd consider crazy or,
Why do you think we're not used to it?
I don't know, it's uncomfortable, man.
Yeah.
Firstly, it's not been part of church culture for very long, I don't think.
Yeah.
But it is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's something you can't see, right? You might think someone's being a jerk when they're actually got a mental health condition, or you might think they're being rude where they're just completely anxious. Now, I don't know if your church does this, and if you do, I'm not casting shade at you, but one of the worst things you can do in a church if you've got anxious or people struggling with bipolar, if they're depressed at that point, is say, all right, guys, get up and turn around and say hello to 3 people around you. Right? Now, for the extroverts in the room, that they don't mind that. But for anyone who's either introverted or anxious or struggling or just had a fight in the car or whatever, it's a horrible 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know it's just a little thing, but if we really thought through what the implications were of the facts that, like, So Beyond Blue said only a couple of weeks ago that at the moment, 3 million Australians currently have a diagnosis in anxiety. So anxiety is the biggest mental health condition in Australia.
Yeah.
Right? So even if 10% of them are Christian, that's 300,000 Christians, right? That's a lot of people. What they also said is that over their lifetime, with these projections, the Australian population is going to grow to a place that 1 in 4 people will have an anxiety diagnosis.
Yeah.
That's on their website, man, with their research.
Sure.
So if you think about that, like, why would we do something that has the potential to really rattle 25% of the congregation?
Yeah.
Now, the flip side of that is, well, we've got to step out of our comfort zones and we've got to grow and all of that stuff. Yeah, that's all true too. But it's just something to consider, man. Hey.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, even just thinking that through, it is a tricky thing to do. Like, there's probably easier steps than others, like, that you could immediately do to help people, say, for instance, who struggle with anxiety and that type of thing. But where do you think, this is kind of delving into something a little like related but different, but where do you think is there a line, just again, I know you're not the mental health professional and that type of thing, but just from your experience and people that you've talked with, like, do you think there's a time and a place to be pushed forward when you're struggling with something rather than being given? I'm just playing devil's advocate here, by the way. Is there a time and a place where people kind of do actually need to be pushed, and it's kind of going, actually, this is really hard and you will get through it. We'll support you. But does that make sense? Rather than you've got anxiety and we're just going to label it, if that makes sense.
Well, I think they're both true. So I think there's definitely a time to push people, but I also think someone who's been labelled anxiety doesn't get out of being pushed just because they got a label.
Yeah.
I don't think that makes them exempt. Maybe we're less direct about it, but I think that the reality is just staying on anxiety. If that's what they're really carrying, they're being pushed whether or not we think they should or not.
Yeah.
You know, that's like, you know, and life is constantly forging them forward. And for me, I know myself is that though I've had some breakthrough since the time I've had of having the robe over my head, bro, every day is
it was a struggle.
Is hard.
Itself.
Every day's hard.
Absolutely.
Today was church, and it was the worst, man.
Yeah.
Nothing overtly went wrong.
Yeah.
But I went home and slept from 12 till 3:30, man, because I was just smashed. And so like now I feel great because I'm with you guys, loving Jesus. It's good, but it really is riding the rhythms.
Yeah. Right.
You know.
So I guess you could say it's quite contextual.
Yeah, it is contextual. But like, I'm also like conscious of the fact that Jesus wants us to rely on him and to grow. Yeah. You know? And so like not all suffering is inadvertently bad. Yeah. We think that in the West that anything hard is bad. I know through some of the, you know, some of the times I've had to push through has forged me to be the man I am. And that whole process gave me a new perspective on God's love for me and, you know, his affection for me as his son. So he used the terrible stuff for great purposes. Absolutely. But in amongst it all, man, you just feel half dead and betrayed and alone. Yeah, absolutely. Which is tricky. So what do you think, like, broadly speaking, we can be doing as the church to really support people that are really doing it tough? Yeah. I think normalizing it is another, and that's part of my role. I want to be overtly raw and open about it. Sometimes I get feedback that I'm sharing too much, but I don't really care that much because that's what I'm dealing with anyway. Yeah. And I think if we could develop a culture within churches that you could as freely speak about mental health as you could about physical health, then I think we've made some progress. Yeah. And then secondly, I think how to figure out how to mobilize people with mental health into mission in a way that's vibrant. Like, they're not disqualified, man. And I even though I don't think we would be audacious enough to say that phrase, we sometimes live it out. You know, and so like I think, man, some of I mean, for example, I got a friend with autism, and if you pray with that person, you are entering the presence of God. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I got another friend with anxiety who is an interceder, intercession ministry. Behind the scenes, last thing you'd ever want to do is put them in front of a crowd, but you text them a prayer request, and you know a few hours later that has been battled on the knees, you know.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I just think it's about mobilizing people. I think it's also about normalizing it, and also just supporting people, man. You know, like the thing about a mental health condition is it's chronic in the sense that it lasts for a long time. And because of that, well, usually, let's just say usually, it can last for a long time. Yeah. So usually, so if it does, it's chronic. If it's short term, it's acute, right? Now, say someone has an acute illness. Is that right? Am I getting that the right way around?
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's a short term thing, like someone breaks a leg or whatever, we know to bring them a meal, you know, or to love on them in the moment. You know, someone breaks a leg, you move a pew aside and get some room for them.
Yeah.
Right. And then that season passes and then they're back to a functioning part of the congregation that gives as well as takes. Yeah. But I think with chronic illnesses like mental illnesses, if they last a long time, you don't quite know what to do. You bring a meal once, but then a year later they're still in it. Like I don't know, man. I just think it's a consistent long-term. Yeah. Like what I've found since starting the podcast is I'm getting people reach out to me, and this is a problem I didn't anticipate, looking for support.
Yeah.
And looking for camaraderie and stuff, which is awesome. Yeah. But I realize it's beyond what I can give now. Yeah. Because I was like, I didn't think it would actually catch on as it has. Yeah. Because you get skeptical of your ideas when you're bipolar, because you're like, I've done this before. But this one is actually working because I think God's on it. And so people are like, okay, well, you know, I don't have a church, I don't have a community or whatever. So I've got to figure out what's next in that sort of step.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm just off the top of my head, but the more I think about it, and I've thought about this kind of mental health topic a fair bit, but it has to be contextual, and that's probably possibly what could be really hard at a congregational level. Yeah. Sometimes is because I'm just thinking practically on the ground, it can get hard to kind of put so many different safeguards in. Not that you don't want to, but then you end up kind of hedging your language so much, and how you do things, and that's a struggle in any kind of context.
Oh, mate, and it can be scary. So a couple of weeks ago, I was helping run youth, and this schizophrenic dude turns up, and he was in the car park, and he just freaked out a bunch of the girls. I went out and talked to him, and he was fine. I could recognise he was having an episode. Just took him away from the group and drove him home. Yeah. But in that moment, they weren't equipped, and so we had to then, we had to get a policy thing together. If this happens, do that. We had to start getting one of the dads just to hang out at youth once, and so we had to put things in place. But I think somehow if we can get proactive rather than reactive, and look, to be honest, some mental illnesses when people are really delving into it, it's scary, man. Especially if you've not been around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the other thing. It is kind of there's some understandability when people don't always react perfectly well because they've never actually experienced it or known about it. So learning a bit more about it, and sometimes experiencing, being around those who struggle with it in different ways is probably a good. Yeah, is what you're saying.
I think so. So before I knew about my condition, this dude at church used to drive me insane. Right? Drive me nuts. He'd always come up to me with these things that he was fixated on. And it turns out he had bipolar, right? And then I find out I do, and I'm like, so we must have been driving each other insane. But what would happen is that he'd come up and be fixated on a song that we sung that he didn't think was theologically appropriate or whatever. Right. And so he'd be fixated on that for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And I used to fight him on it. Because I'd be like, no, it's fine. And then you'd go back and forth. And eventually, once I learned about my diagnosis, I learned just let him have some air for a few weeks and he'll move on to something else. Yeah. And that's literally, so if you get nothing else out of this chat, if you got a friend with bipolar and they get manic and they're fixated on an idea, literally just wait a few days. It's how you solve it, because they'll get on to something else. And it's not even being rude. You don't have to entertain it or patronize, but just be like, all right,
interesting.
Just, and then they'll move on. Is that anyone else's experience? I mean, that's how it works in our house. Yeah. My daughter even knows now when I pitch a new idea, just to say, okay, well, let's just talk about it in 3 weeks, Dad.
At least she knows. That's good.
She's a little genius, man. Like I said, she's my retirement plan A.
That's awesome. But I guess that would mean and this is something I really think is really important with just journeying with anyone.
Yeah.
And I've talked about it a little bit at a church level, and at youth group and things like that. But just learning how to just be a presence with someone.
Yeah, man.
Sometimes not always having to fix them.
Yeah.
I think particularly guys can, generally speaking,
Yeah.
can kind of get into the fixation mode and kind of like, you just need to do this, you need to do that, and you need to do that. But sometimes I've found that people just kind of, not always, but a vast majority of the time, they just want someone to listen to them, ask good questions, be interested, pray for them, read scripture together.
Yeah.
And like, if you're not a healthcare professional or anything like a mental health care professional, that I don't know, I could be wrong, but that's a pretty easy enough thing to do with someone who's struggling with anxiety or depression or might be going through a manic state or a depressive state, and you have bipolar. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it makes you mad when people try to solve you because you see it coming, and so, even like Job's friends, right? So Job lost everything and his friends are absolute geniuses until they open their mouths. They sit there
because they're present with him.
They sit there for a week and they're present and they're covered in dirt or whatever else they did to grieve with him.
Yeah.
Then what do, man? They try to mansplain him.
You must have sinned.
This has happened because you've sinned. This has happened because blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Then his wife jumps on board. Why don't you just curse God and die? And all these voices come in.
Yeah.
Everybody should have just shut up and sat there.
Yeah.
And so, like, I just resonate with your point, Matt. You don't have to solve it. Don't even really have to understand it.
No.
Just be a brother or sister in Jesus, hey?
Mm-hmm. Just love them where they're at.
Yeah, man.
It's good. Be a presence. Pray for them.
Yeah, just pray for them.
Hear their story. I'm big on that. Just tell me more, bro. What's going on?
And you'll find some people with mental health conditions, man, they're secret geniuses. Like they just have some insights that you're like, I would never have seen that, or you just, man, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So where do you think prayer comes into this?
About as necessary as air. So I'll put prayer and air kind of next to each other, Matt. Mate, I'm stuffed without prayer.
Yeah.
Okay, so personally, it's a daily recognition that without God, my days are numbered. I mean, with God, my days are numbered anyway. I'm not going to be.
Yeah, we're all on that boat.
Yeah. But prayer for people, people with mental health conditions need to develop a prayer habit.
Yep.
And people walking with those with mental ill health need a prayer habit.
Absolutely.
And look, in all fairness, I feel for my family sometimes, man, because they have to walk with this as well.
Yeah.
Like they see me on my best days, but they do see the darkest days too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're young, and look, we've taken them on the journey, and look, by God's grace, I think we've done as best we can. I don't think I think they're fine.
Yeah.
By His grace, but prayer,
yeah, prayer is very much
asking for prayer.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you think there is a line? And this is a tricky question. I've wrestled with it, and it is probably too big of a question, but because do you ask God to heal a person, but also at the very same time know that He might, for instance, use that journey for His good? Like, where do you kind of sit on that? Because I'm going back probably to my first question, actually, which was more like around, like, sometimes it was just all throughout prayer. Like, you just need pray and then it'll go away. And like, I don't want to discount that at the same time, but also can see that it doesn't always play that way. Do you know what I mean? For one reason or another. Some reasons I don't know.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of get your take on that.
Yeah. I just reckon Paul with his thorn is a good example, man. Like, so he had a thorn in his flesh, a bit of a tormenting thing. We don't exactly know what it was. And Paul says, look, 3 times I asked for it to be removed. Yeah. And essentially the answer was no, and instead my grace will be sufficient for you. That's sort of my, like 3 times, when in the Bible, when they mention things 3 times, it's almost like, holy, holy, holy is kind of like it's an expression of magnitude and magnification. And so I think it's the same with that. It's like Paul's like, look, I've asked for this to be removed, and it's not going to get removed. He knew how to do healing. Yeah. He knew how to operate in healing. And so he knew what was staying and what was going.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it got to resolution.
Yeah.
For me, that's how I think it is. I'm continually asking for healing, and I will for my brothers and sisters walking a similar road.
Absolutely.
And his grace is sufficient if it doesn't happen. Now, that's not a get-out clause. I think that's what we've got to watch, is sometimes we pray for healing and ask things to be removed, and then at the end say, but not our will, yours be done, Jesus. Yeah. Now, I don't think the phrase is wrong, but sometimes we use that as an almost like a pastoral thing.
Just in case it doesn't
happen. Just in case it doesn't happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas I'm close enough to God, and I pray you guys are too, that that's not going to rattle my faith either. No. I'm going to pray for healing.
Yep.
And if it doesn't happen, I'm still good with God because he's bigger than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so I don't need to hedge my bets or even say that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess another way you could look at it is that his grace is sufficient for you if you do get healed or don't get healed.
Yeah, that's it.
Like both ways, like the point isn't so much that you're getting healed, it's that God's grace is sufficient for you as you go along.
That's it. And look, man, I'd love to be healed in one prayer with you guys laying hands on me. But at the same time, part of my healing has come because a dude in glasses and a white gown was in a lab in the 60s testing drugs and creating and trying, and 15 years later he developed a mood stabilizer. Yeah. You know, and that mood stabilizer helps me live
which is
more
awesome.
Functioning existence, which I think that's part of God's creation. God created the material, and then this guy in his scientific knowledge manipulated the material to create this medicine that sets me free. Yeah. So I want to get healed, and I want to get healed medically, physically, and whatever.
There's many ways to be healed.
Anyway, all healing from God, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to go see your wife and get some like natural medicines because I know that'll help too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Sounds like you need to get off the sugar, apparently.
Yeah, I was telling these guys before I tried to get off sugar, and 2 days later I had the worst stomach cramps I've ever had. And then just had a little bit of sugar and they went away instantly. So I was like, oh, this is not good. So I need to ease off. I need to ease off and then get off this stuff.
What about coffee? How do you go with
I like a lot of coffee, but there's some research that reckons it's good for bipolar people. So I'm just sticking to that, man.
Any excuse will do. No, I'm joking.
And I just drink straight black coffee as well.
Yeah, come on. It's the only way.
Yeah, straight black, long blacks.
Let's go. Is it good coffee?
I only drink, I like good coffee, but I'll drink an instant if someone, like, whatever it takes.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
Everyone has one addiction, I heard a psychiatrist say once, and so if mine's coffee, I think that's okay.
Absolutely.
As long as sugar gets out somehow.
On that note, what has been some, just to kind of round out the conversation before we do some Q&A, what have been some things that you've found really helpful?
Oh, man.
In your own journey?
It's great to end here. Like, obviously, my relationship with Jesus has nothing but deepened during this whole process. And so I think before I understood all this, I knew about God and I knew about his goodness and knew about his grace, but now I feel like I know God and know his goodness. Like I've moved from being a follower to a son.
Yeah.
And man, I love Jesus so much, Matt. So like good. I feel like he loves me back. Yeah. Like I don't think it's one way. And I feel like an adored son in amongst all this. I don't think I'd ever grab that unless going through this process. Yeah. So firstly, obviously, is Jesus. And then my support networks, like my family and my church family. One thing I didn't mention before is when I got back from that long service leave, I'd been away for 2 months. And while I was gone, I got back and they said, we've organised the next month. You just need to roll up here on Sundays at 5 to 9 and just be blessed for the next month. So they gave me like an extra kind of bonus month off. Yeah. You know, and so the support of people around is massively huge, man. So community, like and I think that's why a lot of people are reaching out to me personally for community is because they're just lacking it, man. And so God and community, they're the two things. Yeah.
They're really, really key things.
Yeah, brother.
That's awesome, bro. Well, thanks so much for telling some of your story and your journey. And
it's been a pleasure being here, man.
Yeah, I've really loved it, and I appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty. And praise the Lord for your journey, man.
Thank you, man.
And how that's blessing so many people. And I'm sure it will continue to do that. What are some of your hopes kind of for the future in this realm of talking about this stuff?
Oh, man, if I'm being really honest, at the moment I'm doing church most of my world, and then Sunburnt Souls ministry, volunteer, a bit of my world. In the future, I think that needs to tip.
Yeah,
There's a couple of reasons to that. One, I feel like this is an area of need at the moment. And then secondly, I think just as I grow, my capacity as an effective pastor needs to be supplemented with more people.
Yep.
So I'd be more effective now at church, I think, because I'm 3 days, maybe dropping back to one and putting a 2-day person on all of these things that I suck at, or that I'm not like, it's not good for me to do.
No, fair enough.
So there's that side of things.
Yeah.
And then, man, I just want to see where God takes it, eh? Like, I just want to keep being able to be used by him and and just be loved by him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Be blessed on that journey, my friend. We're not done yet, but I thought
it's good.
Be blessed, my friend.
On a side note, how nice is Matt? You guys are so blessed to have this guy. Well, we've only known each other a couple of weeks. And I'm like,
pretty much.
I really like this guy. Look at his shoes, guys. Look how nice those shoes are. They're expensive. They're like made out of an alligator or something now.
Alligator. Well, I'm glad you think. I think you're a good guy, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah. He sounds exactly like one of my friends, almost identically, and it always trips me out, but I still like it. Well, yeah, thank you. If you've got any questions, we've got quite a few that have come through. So how it works, it should be up on the screen there. You can go on Slido and you put in that little code, and then you can put in whatever questions you want. Or if someone's already asked the question you want, or there's a question that you really like, then you just push the little like button and it'll get bumped up each time you do that.
You guys are so special with your technology. I can't get our guys to get the screen, like the words for the song, at the same time as the song being sung. So for you to be able to actually do that.
We're just really blessed. We've got people like Phil and Adrienne and Talia, and so yeah. Cool. Oh, well, if you guys want to we're going to take like 5 minutes. If you want to stretch your legs, go to the bathroom, get a drink, put in your questions, and then we'll hit to it. Cool.